We are live. Happy Friday, all my dear friends. Welcome back to Disruptors Live, presented by Founderist. I'm your solo hosting co-host, Andy Pedic. It is officially week 2 of maternity leave, and I am just lost without my partner in crime, Miss Abigail Rosenblum. But Abby is busy playing with her cute new baby boy, and you've got only 10 more weeks of dealing with me and my crap. But today I have a very exciting guest, and we're going to have some awesome discussions about women's health and disrupting the world of physical therapy. So I'm going to read a quick bio about my guest, Ashley Zimmerman. Ashley, PT, DPT, and CPT, those are acronyms for physical therapy, is a pelvic health physical therapist, nationally certified Pilates instructor, full spectrum doula, and birth fit leader. Her approach to treating women is to address the person as a whole. She believes that you must look past the current physical presentation in order to find the true root cause of the dysfunction. She believes in facilitating the relationship with your innate body wisdom in order to completely heal. Ashley, thanks for being on today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You can always tell it's a little early on Friday morning when the reading doesn't flow as normal. How are you?
I'm well. I'm doing well. How are you?
Very good. I'm doing great. These programs are 9 o'clock Mountain Time, which
Oh,
I
so
am
it's
now
like
in
8 o'clock.
Pacific time.
Yeah.
So not that 8's a problem, but it's I keep almost missing it. So we're good. We're live on all of the platforms. And on that note, for all of you watching or listening, if you're just catching the first few minutes here, sometimes it's hard to watch it on video. So we're on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, but this will live on in those places, and it will aggregate and disseminate to other locations, and then it'll run next week as audio. So you'll see on our social media when it goes out as a podcast, but wanted to let everyone know the easiest way to watch our program, if you're not catching it live every week on LinkedIn, which we hope you are, you can subscribe on YouTube, or you can subscribe on your favorite preferred podcasting platform. So let's dive in. Ashley, tell me all about you.
Okay. So very brief. I am in Denver right now. I grew up in North Dakota, which people are always like, whoa, never met anybody from there before.
Okay.
We do exist. But so I'm in Denver now. I've been a physical therapist for almost 12 years now. And I recently have shifted to providing more virtual support. But other than that, I also am an instructor at Pearl Street Fitness here in Denver and at Plate Strength if you're local to Denver. So you can catch me in fitness classes there.
Cool.
Yeah.
And talk about becoming a physical therapist, and let's talk about kind of the traditional part of it before I know your evolution is moving to online and teaching people that they can get all these resources virtually. But what was your path to this profession like, and how did you choose to work specifically with women? Let's start there.
Yeah. So I chose physical therapy. I don't really have like a cool story. Nothing really crazy happened. I just got this idea in my head one day that I was going to be a physical therapist, and I had a physical therapist in high school for a little bit, and I was like, great, that's what I'm going to do. And then I just never changed my mind. So I went through undergrad, went through grad school, just always on that path. And when I was in grad school, though, for PT, I thought I wanted to work with babies. I thought I wanted to be a pediatric physical therapist. I did one of my final rotations in pediatrics, and I was like, oh, turns out I just really like babies. And I really like the adolescent female age, but everything in between, I was like, this isn't for me. Love them, but like not for me. So all of the pediatric physical therapists out there, I like bless you, because that job is so hard and it's incredible. So my first job outside of PT school was like a traditional orthopedic outpatient place. And I just found myself like navigating and like being pulled towards the women. And when I would work with them, I was like, there's so much more going on that we're only touching the surface as we're like working on your shoulder or knee or whatever it was, you know? And so that's what made me like really jump into the path of doing all of the continuing education for pelvic floor and pelvic health. And then I became like really like ingrained in the perinatal period. So helping people get pregnant, helping them while they're pregnant, and then helping them postpartum, which is where the birth fit stuff comes in and the doula stuff comes in. I actually took the doula training just because I thought I wanted the education. And then I was like, turns out this is really great. I love this. And I love being able to be that support and connection for women as they're having a baby. So that's kind of how all of that came along. And then, you know, I kind of started to realize, like I said before, I was navigated towards women, but I was like realizing that we were only touching the surface. And one of the downsides of PT is, you know, you're there for physical therapy. And so a lot of the other stuff we couldn't really talk about. We couldn't because it's, you know, not in your scope of practice. And our medical system is so specialized that we miss a lot of things, because it's like, if you need a nutritionist, yes, you have to go to a nutritionist then, and then you have to have a therapist, and then you have to have this person and this person and this person. And sometimes I think people get lost in that process as if they're not a whole human. And especially like navigating my own women's health journey and hearing the things that doctors would say to me, hearing the things that therapists would say to me, I'm like, what? This isn't helpful for anybody, you know? And so that's when I was like, okay, so instead of like just continuing on, I'm going to do my best to be part of the solution instead of continuing this way.
So I know in the bio that I read off of one of those medical things, motherfigure.com, it said a lot about people approaching you when they are experiencing a dysfunction, when they're experiencing trouble of some kind, coming to you with a symptom. Is there also a standardized use case where somebody comes to you, as you mentioned, before they have a baby, and you work through all of the issues, and then you work past having a baby? Is there like preventative or planned ahead processes that you have where you cover multiple things?
Yeah. So when somebody, like if somebody's getting ready to get pregnant, this is how you can look at this: is having a baby is the most athletic event that you're going to go through in your life. But we don't train for it like that, you know? And so our ancestors, though, they had to, right? They had to be moving around all day, or they wouldn't have had food. They wouldn't have had shelter. They wouldn't, you know, all of the things.
Running from tigers and stuff. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or finding the berries, right? Sure. But so we have lost that mobility. Like we have become very sedentary. And so what happens is so your pelvic floor is a group of muscles that's inside of your pelvis. Oh. Okay. So you have your bony pelvis, pelvic floor is inside of them. When you think about toddlers moving, you see them, they can like hang out in a deep squat and just chill there, or they like come in and out of that position, no problem. Okay. What they're doing is they're starting to develop their pelvic floor. Okay. Your pelvic floor needs to be able to move through a deep squat all the way up to standing. That's like the full range of a pelvic floor. Okay. Our current society, we don't really have to ever deep squat unless we're super intentional about it, because we have modern day toilets, so we don't need it for that. And we have tables and chairs. So we don't ever have to deep squat if we don't want to. So what happens is then, you know, we put these kids in school and now they're sitting all day. They're not having the amount of recess or the amount of playtime to help them continue to develop their pelvic floor. And then if they choose to have a baby later in life, then they're having a baby and their pelvic floor doesn't know how to open. Right. And so labor is not the time to teach your pelvic floor how to relax and lengthen. You're a little bit preoccupied. So part of prepping for labor and delivery is making sure that you can connect your pelvic floor to its full range of motion and then use your breath to help with that. It helps decrease time of labor. It helps decrease the pain. It helps just decrease the ease after. So it decreases the amount of tearing. Like there still might be some tearing, but you can significantly decrease the amount. Or if you do tear, you're going to help yourself in the recovery of all of it.
Okay, two-parter, and I'm going to spit all of this out so it doesn't illustrate my ignorance quite so badly. I'm assuming that this is the reason then why women give birth in kind of the stirrup position.
Okay, so glad you asked, because this is really fascinating. birthing on your back, laboring.
Okay, that was my second part of the question.
Yeah.
Was
Yeah.
other westernized countries have like the stool and stuff where you're kind
Yes.
of in the seated
Yes.
massage position
Yes.
versus on your back?
Yes.
I don't claim to know anything about anything. Please take it from there.
Okay. So how this came about in the United States, giving birth on your back, was a study that was completed on a group of women, a small group of women who were sick, like had comorbidities, were like truly ill, right? And what this doctor said was, it is safe for these women to give birth on their back. Amazing. They didn't have the strength to stand or squat, right? Cool. Awesome. That's amazing. But that's not how, like, physiologically our body works. Like, you can see that if you're on your back and your legs are up in the air, now you're having to push the baby up and out versus allowing gravity and allowing the deep squat, which you kind of are getting with your legs back, but you're not able to push into anything, right? Like, you're not connected into the ground. You're not connected. You maybe have a partner holding your hand or holding your feet up, you know? So the reason we give birth on our backs is not one to help the woman's body who's giving birth. It's out of convenience for the medical providers. So this is where having a doula to support you is super, super, super beneficial, because they will provide you options for different positions. I would love to say, well, I'm actually, it is getting better in America. You can advocate for birthing in different positions, but you have to know to advocate. And that, to me, is the problem. Like, we shouldn't even have to advocate for that. This is normal birth is a physiologic function. It's not a medical condition. You're not ill just because you're having a baby. We shouldn't have to say, actually, no, I want to support my body in like its normal process. It should be just given to us. And so that's where I think the problem is. It's not that those positions aren't given. It's just that we shouldn't have to know to advocate, which is where a doula can be really helpful, because then they can kind of do some of like the supporting for you, the encouragement for you. You don't have to be the one to tell your doctor, like, hey, actually, no, I don't want to birth in this position. I don't really care what you have going on after this, but I want to protect my body. You know, the doula can say, like, here's the positions we're going to be in, blah, blah, blah.
So for people who choose to give birth in a private setting or at a birthing center and like to do things like water birth, I understand the relaxing of muscles. I understand the not being on a sterile hospital bed. But why is it then that they're still in kind of a laying position? Are there ways to opt to have the kind of stool apparatus?
So it depends on where you're at. So most of the birthing centers, being on your back would be the last position that they would put you in. There would be a pretty significant reason why you would be there. When you're in the tub, you can do a couple of things. Sometimes you're kind of like squatted, like leaning back, and you have something to hold on to, because you can give birth in the water. And sometimes that's the position. Sometimes you're more like up on your knees, hanging over the side of the tub. And so you're in like that, like a kneeling position, or they have the stools, they have balls that you can sit on. So, and there are some hospitals that have like birthing centers attached to them, or they have like a midwife section where it's not like a traditional hospital room. And so this is becoming more common, but again, you still kind of have to know to advocate for yourself in order to have this process. Yeah.
So how long did you do the traditional clinical orthopedic style physical therapy before going into women specific?
About 4 years. And then for the remaining of that, I've been primarily pelvic health. I still, there's still a few like orthopedic clients that I would see. But it's been primarily pelvic health for the last 8-ish years.
Is there extra training you have to go to for that?
Yeah. So there's continuing education, and in the world of PT, there's a couple different main like schools that you can go through for like the extra training. And then I have done extra training through it's called Holistic Pelvic Care by Tammy Lynn Kent. And that training incorporates more of like a whole body approach, so that is the type of pelvic health that I provide, is of the holistic pelvic health care. You take into account the energetics, the presence of the whole person and where they are at in that day, versus like kind of some of the other schools are more of like, okay, this is physical therapy, and like this is the body physically. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah.
So less of the academic solutions.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And you made a transition to doing this more virtually. Was that in response to a pandemic or natural?
Yeah, good question. So I probably for the last like 3 years have been saying like, okay, it's time for a shift. It's time for a shift. It's time for a shift. The pandemic came, still didn't listen.
For you or for the industry, time for a shift?
For me.
Okay.
Well, actually, I mean, like that's a good point though. Like I do think that there is time for a shift in physical therapy in general. But for me, I was feeling the need to shift to provide more for the clients that I was seeing. So even when the pandemic hit though, but it's a big step. And, you know, like I'm just so used to be like having an office and my clients come to see me and then I go home at the end of the day, you know? So it was a big shift, but the thing that became just so glaringly important that I just like couldn't deny anymore was that every human who came and laid on my table, we weren't just focusing on their physical body, you know, and it was very clear that in order for them to fully heal, we had to talk about the other stuff. We had to dive deeper into who they were as a person and like what really is their passion, what really are their desires, what really is their like reason for being here in order for them to fully heal. And when you think about, so we have all of like our physical pieces, right? We have our muscles, our ligaments, our bones, our organs, but we also have this system that holds us all together, our fascial system. So think of it, the fascial system as just like a connective tissue that's front to back, top to bottom, continuous throughout your whole body. And this fascial system is what holds a lot of our memory and our emotions. And when you think about what's housed in the pelvis for a vulva owner, is all of their sexual organs, including their uterus and their ovaries. And this space is so sacred and holds so much information that you have to, in my opinion, if you're ignoring everything else that comes along with that, you're not going to fully heal. You're going to keep hitting these like blocks, right? And it doesn't mean that it has to be some big emotional mess, right? But if we're continuing to deny ourselves the representation of who we really are, we're not going to fully find true freedom in our body, with our movement, in every area of our life. There's always going to be something that continues to like hold us back.
Wouldn't that also mean that you've been talking about the pelvic mobility, plyometric kind of thing, I suppose, and beyond your fitness in that area and ability to expand to do whatever functions it needs to do, as you say, with the whole body, there is also things like anxiety and stress that cause tension and inability to relax, and possibly gastrointestinal stuff, menstruation stuff.
Yep.
So you're saying that there are all of these systems beyond just the physiology of the business, of the body, and these fascia that you have to speak to them about, help them exercise in mentally and physically. So what is that like over the computer? I gather that maybe you're kind of teaching half the time and then you're instructing on stretches, dieting. How does it typically work?
So each session is really client led, which is really cool because I think a lot of times in PT, and not that this is bad, because if you go in with an ACL repair, like you have to have a plan, right? Like you can't just jump into like deep squats after an ACL repair, right? But the cool thing about the sessions being client led is it allows them to show up how they are on that day. And if 3 sets of 10 of whatever exercise isn't going to work for them that day, awesome. We don't have to do that. Like we're going to go immediately to where they're at, and then we're going to progress from there. So They get to show up. They're where they're at for that day. And sometimes it does look like me instructing them through exercises. Sometimes it looks like us working through what their sexual philosophy is, right? Sometimes it looks like us figuring out how to better organize their day because they just had a baby and they're feeling really overwhelmed. Or we're writing out a map of support for the people who can actually help them, like take little tasks off their plate, right? Like, and what is actually accessible? Because it doesn't work to tell somebody, well, just like ask for help. That doesn't work. We need more, right? Like, what do you actually need help on? What is actually going to be helpful to you? Because if you really enjoy XYZ, but you think you need to take something off of your table and you do that, are you just abandoning yourself? Like, you're taking away this thing you enjoy so that you can have more time for something else, but is that really helpful? Telling
Right.
somebody to just go have a glass of wine and take a bath to relax, like that doesn't do a whole lot, So it's really like one of my favorite things to do is to help people figure out where they can find pleasure in ordinary life, like pleasure, like the childlike joy in ordinary, like regular day. Because that's where, if we can connect to that, if we can connect every single day to this like childlike joy, we automatically shift so many things within us. And that should be our life. Our life should be fun and joyful. It's not always easy. That's not what I'm saying. But that's one of my favorite things to do, is to really help people see that, like, yeah, their life is heavy and a lot, but let's figure out where the joy is.
And how would you say your clientele breaks down from people who are in the reproductive process versus regular sexual health for their whole life versus some kind of medical disability experience?
Yeah. So I see primarily, well, right now it's about 50-50. Like 50% are like perinatal period. Yeah, about 50%. The other 50% is more of like sexual health stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that can look like so many things. That can look like you just don't have a desire for sex. You don't get pleasure from it. It's not enjoyable. It hurts. You just don't know what you want. So that can look like a bunch of different things, but I would say it's 50-50 perinatal. And often they intersect, right? So often the perinatal people, they are also experiencing some kind of sexual health thing that we can talk about and work with.
Would your services apply to things like endometriosis too?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Because endometriosis it's going to shift the way it can shift the way things are sitting in your pelvis, right? But it can affect fertility, which then affects a whole other everything, right? Especially if you're really trying to get pregnant, that can be a really big burden for somebody to bear. And then, when you think about digestion and all of that stuff, so it affects a lot of things. Yeah.
Are there a lot of, okay, let me back this up. People that come to you, are they referred by their primary care provider? Are they seeking this out? I know you mentioned you do a lot of natural and holistic wellness too. Mm-hmm. How do people find you?
So mostly it's word of mouth referrals. From having my office and doing like strictly just like in-person pelvic health PT, I still do have some practitioners that refer like directly to me. For physical therapy, you don't need a script from a doctor. So it's direct access. You can go directly to a physical therapist. What I do now is considered more of like coaching. So it's a little bit different. So you don't need a doctor's note or anything like that. And then if there is something, like if you were to come to me and say that whatever is going on, and I really felt that you needed like an in-person pelvic health PT evaluation, I have people that then I refer to for that, to get the eval, and we can work on all the other stuff. But sometimes there is a need for that like in-person evaluation of the pelvic floor. And so I then refer for that.
In a service that is elective, incremental, private pay, what is it like for women to know that they should seek out these kind of services rather than just relying on their regular medical system that comes along with their insurance?
Yeah. So one of the big like drivers behind me is a passion that eventually every single younger generation that from here on out is able to claim agency over their body. Because right now it's not getting any better for our younger generations. In fact, there is just a huge study that came out about the like extreme mental health struggles of adolescent females that is significantly increasing. And it's really sad. It's really, really sad. And what happens is our agency belongs to our parents because they have to protect us, right? But that agency is kind of infringed upon even as we're kids, like when we're forced to give somebody a hug goodbye. And we don't want to give them a hug goodbye because for whatever reason, they seem a little bit off to us, right? But then a lot of times as a kid, or we're forced to clean off our dinner plate, even though we're not hungry. So we get all of these signals to not listen to our body. And then in adolescence, that agency kind of gets transferred over to society. And society tells us how we're supposed to be, how we're supposed to look, especially with social media now. We don't get a break from how we're supposed to be. And so the biggest thing for me is that the more people that I can help and educate, the more younger generations are going to benefit from it. You know, because we have to have a leader. We have to have somebody that we can look after who is in charge of their own body when it comes to this. And so if I can reach the people who are of childbearing age or who already have kids or who are going to have kids or have a really significant role, then we can make the change for the future generations. And so what I always tell my clients is when they see me, they get to be part of that process now. Like they get to be part of the advocacy for other people. They get to tell all of their friends, like, you have pain with sex, you don't have to live with that. Like your period makes you feel like you're going to die every month. You don't have to live like that. Because in our medical system, we're given a Band-Aid, birth control or whatever, right? But that's not how it has to be. And if we just took a step back and we're able to listen to our bodies, it'll tell us a lot. It'll tell us exactly what it needs, but we're just not taught that. We're not supported in that. And it's one of those things where, like, especially when you have kids, you're expected to then raise your kid like you don't have a full-time job, but you're supposed to work like you don't have a kid. And so there's this really weird, it's a really weird place for a lot of females because we're in this society where there's insane like requirements placed upon us that we didn't even ask for, you know? So that was kind of a long answer.
No.
Did I answer your question?
It did.
Okay.
In a perfect world, if this were prioritized the way that it should be and it were accessible to everyone, would people start doing pelvic floor and reproductive health stuff like as teenagers?
Yes.
When does this ideally, this doesn't just set in when people are looking to reproduce?
Exactly. So ideally, from the time that baby is born, they are viewed as a whole autonomous person. Now, obviously, as a baby, like you rely solely on your caregiver to take care of you, right? But there's no reason why we can't start to instill autonomy in our younger generations as they grow. Age appropriate autonomy is what we need. Like giving them the option, do you want to hug this random person goodbye just because they asked for a hug? We all know those people that are like, oh, come give me a hug. And the kid is like, I don't want to do that. But we force them because this adult is going to feel bad if you don't hug them. Like that doesn't make any sense. Like let the child decide, you know? And then as we get into our puberty stage, that is when, if you have a vulva and you're going to be menstruating, this is when you need to know about your menstrual cycle. I say in depth, but it's not going to be like all of I mean, you could talk about the menstrual cycle for weeks and weeks and weeks and not like learn all about everything there is to know about it. But they need to know more than they bleed once a month, and that if they have cramps and they're irritated, that's PMS and it's just normal and they have to live with it. Like that is not normal. It's common to have these symptoms with your cycle, with your period, but it is not normal. And if we just allowed these young females to learn about their body and to teach them how to, which is controlled a lot with nutrition and lifestyle, but their period wouldn't have to be like that. But they don't know that. We don't teach them that. And when you think about what's happening right now, they're pulling away any kind of like sexual health talk in schools, which I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if schools are the appropriate places to talk about it. I don't know if it should all rely on the parents, because that kind of doesn't make sense, because the parents don't even know. You know, like there has to be a societal shift into valuing that each person deserves to know about their body. This shouldn't be something that people even have to seek out. This should be just normal, because you're a human and you get to know about your body.
Love that.
Yeah.
Well, this is an awesome topic. Obviously, I wish Abby was here because she and Kevin had a baby 10 days ago, but I've really enjoyed this. So on this program, we like to talk to people who are disrupting their industry. And we talk to a lot of tech people. We talk to a lot of coaches. You have kind of broken out of an industry that is more traditional, both in the way, the practices that you offer, and the modality itself, and the way you deliver it virtually. One of the things we like to ask is, what makes you different from your peers? Why do the people that work with you like working with you?
I think it's because I just allow them to be whatever they are. In a traditional therapy office, I'm going to be telling you like, okay, these are the exercises. And while that might be part of it, I might suggest exercises, but I don't believe that I know more about your body than you do. Mm-hmm. I'm just here to help facilitate that conversation between you and your body. And I think that that's the biggest piece, is they get to find that connection to themselves. It's not forced, and it's right at their pace. It's what feels accessible and where they're willing to go. And I have nothing to do with it other than just facilitating conversations and holding space.
I love that. So beyond being a health practitioner and an advocate, what is something as a business owner, business or personal, what is something right now this season that you're proud of? We love asking this question.
Yeah. So I officially closed. It's been like a little bit of a transition, but my office officially closed in January. December 30th was the last one. So the whole first quarter, I've just been celebrating that.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. It was a longer transition than I anticipated, but that's okay. It's okay. Everything's fine. It's closed. It's done. And now I'm like really able to dive into this other side. And it's been different than I expected, but better.
And I know that for this incremental services, health-wise, people spend a shit ton of money on their yoga class or their spin class or even massage, and things like mental health or reproductive health that seem to be paramount importance. They maybe say they can't afford the money for, not right now, even though right now I'm suffering in my body. So for the cursory level, for people who are curious about this kind of stuff, women, people with a daughter, what are some maybe books or podcasts or good places to start to educate yourself in this area?
Yeah, good question. So Aviva Romm, Aviva Romm, Romm. She started as a midwife and then became a Yale trained doctor. Her website, and it's just avivaromm.com. Her website has a plethora of information, especially, menopause to starting your period, or to like how to find period products that are, you know, safer, cleaner, whatever, all of the things. And she also has a podcast called On Health, but if you search for Aviva Ram, it'll pop up. I believe she puts out an episode once a week or once every other week, but it talks about all of the things that like medical providers don't tell you, what you didn't talk about with your mom, in terms of having a vulva and ovaries. And so that would probably be like my biggest one. And then it's actually sitting right here. The Period Repair Model.
Okay.
By Laura Bryden is also super helpful if you're like just for yourself, or if you're really trying to help your daughter. There's also things in here about like menopause and the whole thing too, but it's one of the best books that I have found that like tell the story of like how a period happens in terms that like you can understand as a layperson. You don't have to have it's not all of like the fancy words.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess one of the big things that we didn't touch on, which these sessions always go by too quickly, now you're able to provide this service to people outside of Colorado, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yep. Yeah. So I can work with anybody now, and I do, the group is closed right now, but I have like a group so I can help more people at once. It's called Claiming Body Agency. So we go through all of this, and it's kind of like your one-stop shop for like the start of all of this. Obviously, if there's more specific things going on, then that's like a different conversation. But it is truly like we talk about cycles, we talk about pleasure, we talk about sexuality, we talk about relationships and rest and all of the really, really good things that we should get when we're younger. And so that's a way to make it also a little bit more cost effective because you're with a group. And the next one will run this summer.
What are the ways that people can interact with you, consume your content? What are the socials and the websites and all the things?
Okay, so my Instagram handle is Hey Ashley Z. And then my website is ashleezimmerman.com, drashleezimmerman.com. And those are the best ways. My contact information is on all of that. And so if you want to like ask, I'm totally like, email me, ask me a question. Email is the best way. Versus like an Instagram DM. If you email me, that is going to be the best way. But that information is on my website and on Instagram.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, we will put those links in all of our places. Ashley, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
To everybody out there watching this, thanks for joining us for another week. To all the members of our Founders community, I appreciate you. Abby, Kevin, baby Ari, love you guys. If you are interested in finding a co-founder, a collaborator, a mentor, community groups, Founderist is a community of business matchmaking. We work with people all over the United States and beyond to find collaborators and expanders for you. We appreciate everybody that tunes in weekly for Disruptors Live. I'm going to sign off and give you all have a wonderful Friday. Ashley, I appreciate you. We'll put everything in the links and we'll look forward to talking again soon.
Yeah, sounds good. Bye.